Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a hands-on, sort of real-world review of the Nikon 24mm f1.8 for the Nikon Z series camera. Now, I did have the pleasure of taking this out to Las Vegas with me on a recent trip. I had it on the Nikon Z7, and I took it out to the Grand Canyon because Maverick Helicopters called and said, "We have an extra space. Would you like to fly out to the Grand Canyon on our helicopter?" And I was like, "Oh, I have a lens to test out. Why don't we test it out in the Grand Canyon?" So I will be showing you those images a little later on, but let's start off with the feel of this lens. This is a very light lens at just under a pound, or it's 450 grams, which is probably the same thing if you do the conversion. Exactly. You have a lens hood. It's a lens hood. It goes on like this, lock it in, you're good to go. Don't lose it, you lose it, it's gonna cost you money to replace it. You now have a 72mm lens cap, which means you have a 72mm filter. Unlike the prior 1.8s that Nikon has put out, those are 67mm. This one is 72. On the side of the lens, you have one switch. It's auto to manual. You have one ring. It doesn't rule them all. Not one bit. Actually, technically, it does rule many things because on this lens, this controls manual focus as well as being your actual control ring. If you wanted to set it to do something, some kind of function, you can set it. This is your control ring. No longer is there another ring on here like they have on the 24-72.8, where you have a control ring that could actually control something. Just like the other 1.8 lenses, this one does not have VR built in because Nikon has IBIS in their Z6, Z7, and not their Z50. So there, think about that for a second. Okay, your second is up. Your Z50 will not have IBIS. This lens does not have VR, but most likely somebody with a Z50 is not spending $996 to put this lens on that body. In terms of close focus, you can get within 10 inches. I did photograph a tree or shrub thing. It wasn't the burning bush in the desert at the Grand Canyon, but it was a tree shrubby thing, and I'll show you that in just a second. But I was able to get very close to it and have the sharpness right where I wanted it to be, you know, in focus on the wood. In terms of autofocusing, this lens has two stepping motors, which should make it autofocus quicker, but I will remind you that the Nikon Z6 and Nikon Z7 have this weird thing with autofocus where it does this. It's like, bzz, bzz, ooh, it's in focus. And it's like, bzz, bzz, ooh, it's in focus. Meaning, it's like, it looks for the front, it looks for the back, and then it finds the middle. It's a little faster than that, but you can see it happening. Whereas with the Canons and the Sonys, you don't see this type of focusing happening. So I found that this lens, or most lenses, or honestly the Z6 and the Z7, have that weird focusing thing. And I honestly found myself numerous times putting my hand in front of the lens to see if it's focusing or not, because I couldn't tell. I'm like, is it focusing? Is it not focusing? That's more of a thing when you're shooting wider, that it's harder to tell whether or not something's in focus or not. That's why I would put my hand in front of the lens, focus on it, move my hand, and then realize that it is actually focusing. For those people who care about how many blades the lens has, I will tell you, this one has 9. And I'll be honest with you, you're gonna see in the sample images that the bokeh seems to be kind of weird. I don't normally say that when I'm looking at bokeh because it usually looks pretty good when I'm looking at good glass that may be considered this. But this had some weird bokeh-y things, and you'll be able to download the sample RAW file so you can pixel peep yourself to see if you like it or don't like it. I don't care how many blades a lens has. I want to see one blade in a lens. What would one blade look like, Jared? Yeah, I don't know, probably not very good, but that's beside the point. Now it's time to jump into the sample images, starting with this of the pilot. Now, I was asked by Maverick Helicopters, who we've flown with, I think, 3 or 4 times before, if I wanted to go out to the Grand Canyon, because they had an extra seat in the helicopter, and I was like, sure. I'll be over there. It's a 2.5-hour trip, round trip, out to the Grand Canyon and back, and I had the Z7 with the 24-70, and I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be a good landscape lens, because a lot of people want that fixed 24mm 1.8. Even if they don't shoot at 1.8, they want that for shooting landscapes. So that gave me a great opportunity to fly out there and get some sample images, just like this one of the pilot, the helicopter pilot right here. We're actually banking, that's why you can see, that's the Mandalay Bay in the background, the Mandalay Bay, because that's the, you can see the gold of it. It's not Trump Tower, because that's one tower. This is multiple towers, and it has that gold reflection. But let's zoom in on his glasses. That's where it autofocused. The focusing point, I was trying to find his eye. I was not using IAF because that wouldn't work in this situation, but the focus on the reflection is perfectly fine for me. I'm happy with that. I was at 1/640th of a second at f1.8, all the way down at 64 ISO. So that just, I couldn't really shoot horizontal because I couldn't give the context. I could barely have the yoke in his hand or have most of him in there to give it context. So that's why I shot mostly vertical when trying to capture him. There was his seat, there was a jump seat in the middle, and there was my seat, and there was another seat to the right of me. So that's how close I was to him when I was trying to get that image. Let me cut in here real quick and let you know that the image that you're seeing on the screen right now was taken with this lens and edited using some of our presets from FroPack 1 and FroPack 2. If you're looking to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, well, we created FroPack 2, which consists of 15 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack2. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide that you like it, you can pick it up right now on sale at a very special launch price. Or if you haven't picked up FroPack 1 just yet, you can get FroPack 1 and FroPack 2 as a bundle and save a bundle. Yes, save a bundle. And now, let's get back to the video. Speaking of horizontal, the next image is when we entered the Grand Canyon with the helicopter. Now that was pretty cool. Flying in, and you're like, I felt like I was in Star Wars, and I'm like, phew, phew, we're flying in between. Or if you're in Independence Day and you're flying and you're trying to like not get shot down by aliens or hit the walls on either side. But it was pretty cool when here's the Grand Canyon, you come up and then you like go in, and that's what I was trying to convey here with the still. You can see how you can only see a top of the stick, the gun. There's actually no gun on this helicopter ship, so I'm not really sure what the red buttons or the triggers are for. Somebody who knows what that is, please let me know down below, because I want to know what the trigger's for. But you can see, what am I at now? I'm at F4. Why? I don't know, because I felt like going to F4, just to give some different examples. And also, because it will show more of his face in focus than at 1.8. It's sharp, it's contrasty, it's colorful. It's really the same stuff I say a lot of times about lenses like this. It's doing the job that it is supposed to do. Now, moving on to the next image, this was after we landed in the Grand Canyon. So you land on the floor or close to the floor. You're not exactly down on the floor of the Grand Canyon, but they land on this little area, and you can get out for 25-30 minutes and photograph. So this was taken at 1/2000th of a second, f4.5 at 64 ISO. This is my favorite shot of the bunch, to be honest with you, and I used FroPack 1 preset called Skittles to give me a starting point on this one, and then I tweaked it from there. But Skittles did a really good job giving me a starting point. I just think that this is a really good landscape shot, at least for me, not being an actual landscape photographer. Moving on to the next image, I wanted to shoot a person with this lens, not anything else. So this guy's standing here. This one is taken at f2.8. The next one is taken at 1.8. So you can see the difference. From 2.8 to 1.8, you can actually see that the background is blowing out even more. So if you had a 24-70 2.8, you can see what you would get, or a 14-24 2.8, you would see what you would get, the difference between 1.8 and 2.8. Is it that big of a deal? In most situations, no. I think a 24mm, especially this, 24-1.8 at this price point, is a very limiting lens. It wouldn't be my personal first choice. I have a 24-70S. I could shoot it at 24 and then still have some range, but that's more for me who's a photojournalistic type shooter. If you're a landscape shooter or you want to shoot off of a gimbal for doing video, 24 is going to be a nice range, and having those dual motors for having a gimbal when you're shooting video is going to come in handy. Now, in terms of that weird bokeh, I'm on the shot at 1.8, and as I zoom around this image, it just looks blotchy. It doesn't look as clean and as smooth as I would expect it to look for a $1,000 lens. I just really haven't noticed many lenses giving me this blotchy look. Maybe kit lenses sometimes, but that's what it just looks like to me when I look through this image. So again, you can download that sample image and you can look for yourself to see if you like it or you don't like it. I don't think it's a deal breaker in this point because most people that don't know what they're looking at aren't going to be like, ah, that bokeh's terrible. But maybe you want something smoother and nicer. This is just shooting more back towards the sun. Are we getting any flare? I wasn't shooting into the sun, but everything looks perfectly fine here. We can go to the edge of the canyon, and I don't see any fringing going around there. Not that I would care if I did, because I'm not gonna lie to you. I really don't care. I like to get the shot, that's more important to me. But again, if you're spending $1,000 and it has really bad purple fringing, you're gonna wanna throw this into the Grand Canyon. Actually, you wouldn't because you spent $1,000 on it. You're gonna wanna do something else. Next up, here's the close-up image where I got close focus of whatever this shrubbery is in the Grand Canyon. I got close, I was at 1/5000th of a second at f1.8, 64 ISO, and there's that picture. Not much else to say about it other than when you zoom in, it's sharp where it needs to be sharp, and it falls off as the subject either gets closer to me or further away. Continuing on, there were a couple of people out there, including this father and son, who just sat on the edge of the canyon, and I'm like, I'm gonna get a picture here. So I switched over into, I believe, single focus at 1.8 to lock onto the father's back or the father's head to get the shot. At 1.8, it looks really good. I like that there's the foreground element. Well, you've got the subject. On the right-hand side, you have that shrubbery bush. I like to call it the burning bush, even though it wasn't on fire. And it really separates the subject from the background. That's why you have a 1.8. That's why you get a 1.4, because it's gonna isolate that subject and make it look more cinematic and more photojournalistic and less like a snapshot with your cell phone, unless you're using portrait mode. But that's what you get a 1.8 lens to do. Would you like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations? Well, if you said yes, just look for this orange box over on the website, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I will send you that free guide. I had a little bit of trouble when it came to autofocus. I missed a few times where it just was doing the front focus, back focus, middle focus thing, and I missed because I shot too soon before it was in focus. There were some times where I know that I had dynamic area AF on and it was right on the subject and it just missed. Case in point is this crow. There was a crow just waiting for us to feed them, it or her or she or whatever pronoun that they use, and I couldn't get the crow in focus. I started off in single focus, the crow wasn't moving, and it couldn't hit it. I was like, what's going on here? Then I switched into dynamic focus. I put the box right on the bird. I'm like, box, meet bird. Camera autofocus, and it just couldn't hit it. Maybe it's too small, maybe because it's a dark subject and it's it's honestly a dark black. Maybe it couldn't find it, but I don't have this trouble in other systems, and I shouldn't have had trouble here putting the focusing point right on the subject, hitting autofocus, hitting lock on, just anything. It just couldn't hit the bird. So that's one of the reasons I wasn't happy with this lens, is I was questioning the autofocus at 1.8. That could be a combination of the body's autofocus capabilities and not as much as the lenses. With all that being said, we've come to the two most important aspects of any review: the sniff test and the wind tunnel test. Smells like the set of The Crow. Too soon? I don't think it's too soon. That movie was like 30 years ago at this point. Maybe less, maybe like 25. But it smells like the set of The Crow. Wind tunnel test? Well, it actually did really well because the helicopter was spinning and wasn't blowing the lens around at all. So it passes. Let me recreate it, whatever, I'll do it. That's helicopter noises, and this was the blade and the rotor spinning. It passed. And now my final thoughts. Sigma, are you listening? Can you please figure out a way to bring your lenses to the Z mount? Nikon, are you listening? Can you allow Sigma to bring lenses to the Z mount? Because there's no reason this should be a $1,000 lens that's a 1.8. How much are the 1.4s gonna be? How much are the 1.2s gonna be when you come out with those S lenses for the Z6 and the Z7? They're gonna be mighty expensive. I prefer having a 14-24, which again doesn't exist yet for the S lineup, or just using the 24-70 and shooting at 24. But like I said, if you're a landscape shooter and you want to have the 1.8, not because you want to shoot at 1.8, just because you feel that the primes are sharper, which they tend to be, and better colors and better contrast, then go with that. And then you have the ability to shoot at 1.8. If you're going to be a video shooter and you need a wide angle for being on a gimbal, this is going to be a nice option. So it comes down to a couple of things. Do you need the 1.8? Do you want to spend $1,000, or can you spend $1,000? And that is basically it. Don't forget, you can download sample images over on the website to see if you like the quality of those images and like the quality of the files, and then I guess like this lens. That's where I'm gonna leave it. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.